Hello and welcome to Talk the Walk. I'm Azam Khan. As Hong Kong begins to ease pandemic restrictions and open back up to the world, the city is ready to relaunch its entertainment scene. The last few years have been particularly difficult for the local musicians and events, but 2023 expects to be a revival of that, including the upcoming Clockenflap Festival in March, the city's biggest annual music and arts festival, which was last held in 2018 due to the pandemic. What will the resurgence of the music scene expect to look like next year? And what lessons and inspirations were drawn from the last few years by those in the industry? My guest today, to unpack the topic, is music director of Magnetic Asia, a Hong Kong-based entertainment services entity, and co-founder of Clockenflap, Justin Sweeting. Mr. Sweeting, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, the last few years have been challenging with COVID. So how does it feel for you and your team to be able to put events back on again for next year?
I think it's probably an understatement to say that we're kind of chomping at the bit to get back to it again. It's putting on events is an experience is what we love to do, and obviously we haven't been able to do so for obvious reasons. So it was really a wonderful feeling to be able to come back and have some good news to share with the city and for the city in what feels like kind of a long time coming.
Right. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've drawn, that you or your team have drawn during the COVID period, whether in terms of business model or some inspirations for content curation?
I say kind of the acceptance that some things just can't be mitigated against, and we're in very much, practically speaking, we're in a business that manages risk, and this period has shown us that some things just are unmanageable, or some uncertainty can't be managed. And so for us, we've tried to use this time as positively and productively as possible. So for us, that's meant kind of relooking at everything we've done and taking the time to figure out are there different or better ways that we could do it moving forwards. But equally looking at some projects that we've had kind of on the back burner for a while, which we haven't had the kind of time to fully execute. So we've tried to take that time and see some of those through.
Right, you guys offer a really broad range of end-to-end services with Magnetic Asia. Did that make things even more difficult when you were trying to weather the storm over the last few years? And what are some of the biggest challenges that you perhaps foresee, even with the travel restrictions being eased, for next year?
I wouldn't say we've had, the pandemic has been devastating for many, most people. So I don't think we've had it harder than anyone else in particular. But I'd say that, that there are some inherent challenges to, especially touring international artists, which will remain related to travel and related to kind of the interdependencies of touring. Means that when you have different countries opening up at different times and with different restrictions and regulations in place, it makes touring artists across the region as a whole challenging, or even more challenging than it was previously. So I think that will take some time to kind of iron out and figure out how, what are the practical steps forwards that's going to be viable for everybody.
Right, and is Hong Kong ready to return on the scene and be like a prime destination for music talent? People have said, it's difficult now. Hong Kong has a lot to overcome and revive the entertainment scene. So how has that process been to draw talent for next year and for the upcoming Clockenflap?
I say that we're really fortunate in that Clockenflap over the years has developed a reputation as one that artists want to play, both in terms of the experience of playing, in terms of the production and how just how positive the audience is at the festival, but also in terms of professionally, industry-wise, it's seen very much as a very strong positioning play. So many international industry come to the festival, so many promoters from all around the region and beyond come and watch the artists playing, that more often than not, the artists that are on the Clockenflap bill end up playing in other spots around Asia kind of the year afterwards. So it's become a very important showcasing event over the years. And what that does is it means there's a certain demand that artists have for wanting or understanding the, I guess, the opportunity of what the Clockenflap play is. And so we've seen very strong interest across this whole period for wanting to play and wanting to come to Hong Kong and wanting to be a part of it. It's really been more a case of when is the city opened up to enable that to happen. So we're, delighted that time is coming very soon.
Obviously, I want to talk about that music, the local music scene. It's obviously been particularly difficult for local musicians in Hong Kong, during the last couple of years, not being able to perform. So can you talk about, obviously you guys have a finger on that pulse. So can you talk about like what that experience has been from your understanding for them and what can be expected for 2023 for them?
Sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's been, live music not being able to happen and not being able to perform is clearly a major issue for musicians. But it's not just musicians that are affected; it's the whole wider industry as well. It's production people, it's venues, it's F&B, everything is interconnected. So it's been a really challenging time when the events haven't been able to happen. Of course, when they have been able to happen, and we've had these pockets of time where live performance have been allowed at various times across the pandemic, and on the other side, necessarily that has presented an opportunity for really a focus on local artists. And we've also seen a real blossoming for certain artists who've been able to kind of manage that opportunity and really grow. And so we've seen for the first time in many, many years, more local artists than ever selling out venues and really drawing in larger crowds than they had pre-pandemic. And hopefully that's a trend that's going to continue. So overall, I think, that there's been a lot of positives that have come out of this time. But of course, that's not to say that the period as a whole has also, really hardly hit many, many people in the industry.
Right. And you guys also, obviously, Clockenflap, for example, it's not just music, it's an arts festival. You guys tried to make an experience, an immersive experience. So has that changed at all? Like how the last few years, has that changed the way you want to put on the performance, the festival, or will it be more or less the same?
No, I don't think so. I think that, art, like so many of the facets of the festival, Clockenflap really is the experience of all these things coming together. And art in particular is something that's been sewn into our DNA since the very beginning. So that's not something that's going to change. And, it's all these elements that come together which really make the experience so different and special. So we're not going to change that. All we look to do is tweak it and keep it ever interesting for people to come, so it doesn't become, it doesn't become stale. It becomes something new to discover each time.
Right. And obviously, you guys also put on Sonar Music Festival. So what about in terms of what you guys want to curate for events? Is that also pretty much the same, or you guys are looking to broaden that?
We're looking at a whole ton of more events. We want to do more across all sorts of experiences, all sorts of events, all sorts of opportunities. We're very bullish and excited about what's possible, and we want to be a party that's at the forefront of delivering that in Hong Kong and beyond. So we've got all sorts of plans coming for the future, and really just kind of raring to go.
Right. And obviously, a lot of people in the industry during the COVID period tried to switch more to digitalization and gain more understanding and try out different things to bring the experience to the audience. Has that been the case as well for you guys, or what you guys are trying to do going forward?
Yes, we've certainly done plenty in that space. So during the pandemic, we were involved in many stream concerts on the digital front, with some very kind of high-profile international artists as well as local artists. We were involved, for example, with the Glastonbury stream, which went out, and for that one, that was during a time in Hong Kong where some gatherings were allowed. So we were able to put that on and showcase that stream at the Grounds venue in Central. And we've also have plans and are in various stages of development for other kinds of digital experiences that are related to the festival, and I guess all the opportunities that digital world opens up. For us, we don't see it necessarily as an either or. So we don't look at one replacing the other. We see them as very different experiences.
Right.
So obviously the live experience is not something that will be replicated exactly in the digital world. So that's not what we look to do. We look to find ways that these experiences can exist almost in parallel and in tandem. And some people looking for a certain kind of experience can enjoy in one realm, and others can do so in the others.
Is it predominantly just streaming when we're talking about learning things from digitalization, or is it an over-encompassing experience with streaming? Just like is it?
No, I think there's all sorts of interesting worlds out there. I guess
Right.
Ourselves, we've looked into the AR and VR and what we call XR kind of worlds, and we have kind of plans afoot in all those areas. So yeah, the exciting thing is you're not bound to the same limits. It's just a different. It's a different ballgame in these spaces, and so we want to be able to understand these spaces, to be able to deliver something authentically and that sincerely speaks to our brands. So in the case of Clockenflap, how do we provide a Clockenflap experience in the digital world that stays true to the core of who we are and what we are about?
Right. And just from your opinion, where do you think Hong Kong ranks in Asia when it comes to not just with the music scene, but just as a destination for to host events and to host performances? Do you think that's changed at all for next year, or how would you compare with other big cities like Singapore or in Bangkok?
Well, I mean, practically speaking, other cities are kind of ahead of the curve in terms of having opened up earlier than Hong Kong has. So there's been more events taking place in these areas than we've had in Hong Kong. What we want to do is try and kind of redress that balance, basically, on the scales, and try have more things happen in Hong Kong. Our focus is, how do we give more great experiences to the people of the city? And so that's where our focus and our attention is.
Right. And have the last few years helped foster any new inspiration on balancing the target audience of what you guys are trying to reach to, or perhaps expand that, whether it's a family experience or for the younger adults?
Yeah, well, I mean, Clockenflap has always spoken to a very broad demographic. So we have everything from really young kids to grandparents are attending the festival, right? And so that's a broad age group that most festivals don't speak to that wide an age bracket. So for us, what we're conscious of coming back is that our edition next year, it will be 5 years since our last one. So whilst there have been some generations of kids who've now grown up with the festival, there's been this gap. And so that presents in some ways an opportunity to reset what we're about and kind of relook at what we've done and think if there's any new and interesting ways of how we present ourselves to, there would have been kids who, last came at 12, and now they're older teenagers turning up, and their experience will have gone from being maybe more in the family area to roaming free with their friends around the rest of the site. So we're certainly conscious that there's been a time away, and so we do look at this as an opportunity to reset and reframe the festival to set new expectations and hopefully new bars of what a festival can be in Hong Kong.
I'll pause you right there while we step away for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. After the break, we'll be back with Justin Sweeten. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk the Walk. I'm speaking with co-founder and music director of Clockenflap, Justin Sweeten. Justin, I wanted to ask you about your role as music director. That sounds, really exciting for for someone like me or anybody else when they hear that, when you get to do what you do for these festivals. Can you just talk a little bit about that role?
Sure. And yeah, I feel super fortunate and grateful for what I get to do. And essentially, what that is curate programming across all of our events. So trying to put on artists and experiences and events which are going to resonate with people and inspire people and hopefully give them a broader musical spectrum to draw from. With Clockenflap in particular, that really revolves around kind of creating balance across our lineup. We spoke a little bit earlier about how we speak to a very broad demographic, and it's important for us to be able to give all those different people of all those different backgrounds and ages and interests something that is a uniquely Clockenflap experience. And on the
Right.
music front, we've always looked to mirror really the best facets of what we believe to be the best facets of the city. So, very East meets West approach, a very the balance between classic, legendary artists as well as new up and coming acts. We try and create a blend, and the danger is that that can often come off as a real kind of mishmash, hodgepodge of a lineup if you're not careful. So it's critical for us to create something that ultimately comes across as cohesive and relevant, and that is what we spend our time doing. And it's a real honor, and it's incredibly rewarding when you get to see people enjoying it firsthand and watching the crowd and knowing that you played, you know, any kind of part in that. Where something might not have happened before, but because of the team that works so hard around this, we've been able to pull it off and really give something to the people to enjoy collectively.
Right. I've always admired that about Clockenflap, is that you guys strike that balance between new artists, up and coming artists within Hong Kong and within the region of Asia. How would you express what Hong Kong's current music scene is like, particularly after the last couple of years? Are you excited about it? Is there a lot of new young talent that's trying to come up?
Oh, I'm incredibly excited. I kind of mentioned earlier, I don't really remember a time where there've been so many local artists who are at such a kind of breakthrough level in the scene, and it's across different genres, and it's different kinds of artists, and it's really exciting. It's kind of the next stage in the kind of development cycle that the local scene needs to go through. And it's always difficult to talk about the scene in general, because really it's case by case on specific artists. And more than ever, there are more specific artists who are making further strides and steps in their careers to be able to make them genuinely viable careers, which is always, that's been a challenge in Hong Kong for a long time. But just like always, the festival lineup is going to have many local artists on there, and the challenge we have is we never have enough slots for all the wonderful acts that we like to put on, and that includes obviously a rich array of incredible local artists. So it's a cause and topic of great debate internally, because there are so few slots, and so every single one is very well thought through about who should be in those slots and why, and which stage works best at what time, and all that kind of stuff. So it's wonderful to have so many options. It's a great challenge that we have to try and pull it all together, and one we're very excited and happy to be able to do.
Have you guys been able to also expand the amount of slots you have and trying to find different other ways for them to perform in the lineup, whether it's whether it's like online, on live streaming, or in other aspects of the festival since 2018, I mean?
Well, what we've done, I mean, at the festival itself, the site obviously has limitations in terms of the number of stages and the number of slots that are possible. But what we do is try and look at things more, I guess, strategically and holistically. So one of the things we created during the pandemic was a very simple music platform called Clockenflap Music. And this is just a way for us to keep pushing music that we care about and want to present to people and want folks to check out. And this has some weekly kind of podcast style shows and music recommendation shows from ourselves, but also from artists. And it's a great way for us to present and keep this notion of discovery growing, and hopefully growing the audience for this kind of all these kinds of music moving forward. So that gives us another platform to be able to showcase the artists that we care about and believe in.
Right. Are you focusing just on Hong Kong? Where are you guys mainly looking to put on performances for 2023?
No, yeah, we certainly have both further aspirations, but we already work across the region. So we work with partners across the region. We have our own ticketing business, which has offices across Asia. So we're already kind of pan-Asian. And I'm speaking to you right now from Canada, where we have a North American operation. We have a team in the UK. We have, we're spread out now. We're very much a global operation, and taking advantage of all the benefits that provides.
Right. And obviously, many people are looking forward to the Clockenflap coming up. We've been starving for events, and would you say that there's an extra responsibility or a drive to sort of put on a huge splash, because Clockenflap is a staple for Hong Kong, and just to sort of make like a statement to the world that for the city that it's back?
I think we always have that inherent drive always to want to do that. To be honest, we always try and look at ways we can continuously improve and fine tune our product and ultimately the experience. I think this time around it is necessarily there's a difference because we have been away for so long and things haven't, and that drive really just comes from that same hunger that the fans are feeling. Everyone just wants this to happen, and we're in the same boat. We've all been so desperately yearning and missing that opportunity for the kind of collective coming together to celebrate creative inspiration. And something really special and magical happens when you have all these pieces come together. And we only wanted to bring Clockenflap back once we could be assured that we could have all those pieces come, and we could ultimately deliver an experience that, more important than anything else, is going to be fun. It's got to be fun for people. And so we felt that we were given those assurances that the event could take place in a manner that we would require for people to have fun ultimately. So we're just so excited to be able to get back to it and feeling that same sense of longing that we're hearing from fans as well, because it's just been too long. But we don't come at it from a point of ego. It's not about trying to make a statement, so to say. We want to do the best job we possibly can, and if we do that, then people are going to have the best time they possibly can. And when all those things come together, that's when you have something really special and magical happen. So that's really what our focus is on.
I believe that's all the time we have. Justin Sweeting, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And we'll see you same time next week. Goodbye.